penny's sake, in the cauldron boiling steak, I have muted terror from, would have bat and tongue of dog. I just walk and blind when think, use its legs and howl its wing, for a charm of powerful travel, like a head of boiling feathers. Double, double, toil and double, fire burn and cauldron of battle.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. In the last episode, we traveled to Alton, Illinois, home of the Haunted America Conference, to take a peek inside Planet Weird's Museum of Haunted Stuff. I hope you enjoyed it, because we get to go back. There were way too many wonderful, fun, creepy tales to fit into just one episode, so take my hand as we go. Lights out. Dana Newkirk managed to twang one of my oldest, most visceral fears as we started our conversation. She started off by introducing me to Ruby, a haunted doll.
Did Greg tell you anything about Ruby?
No, he did not. I'm speaking with Dana Matthews, who is one of the partners here with the Paranormal and Occult Mobile Paranormal Museum. All right, lay it on me.
Ruby is my favorite object that we have. We've been traveling around with her probably the longest, I would think.
Ah.
She is very scary looking. I mean, obviously
yes, she is.
Pretty terrifying. Her eyes like to move by herself. But so originally Ruby came to me because she belonged to a family friend of mine, and it had been in that family for a long, long time. Actually, I think that it was.
Looks like it.
I think it was my friend's like great aunt who owned the doll when she was a little girl, and she died really, really young.
Oh.
And so the doll was like a family heirloom. She was really attached to her. And a lot of members of this particular family believe that Ruby makes people feel sick. Mm-hmm. They think it's because that aunt is still sort of somehow attached itself to the doll.
Wow.
So they would pass her around from family member to family member, and all of these family members claim that their kids would get weird allergies, they would get chronic like bronchitis, like sick people all the time.
Yeah.
So it would be like a year with this aunt, and then they'd be like, I can't take it, you need to take her for a year.
Oh my goodness.
And she just got passed around.
Uh-huh.
And again, because she was a family heirloom, they didn't want to throw her out or anything like that. And it was sort of a family superstition.
Do you know what the aunt died of?
I think it was tuberculosis.
Ah.
So, for the most part, Ruby has never made me feel sick. She's never made Greg feel sick.
Uh-huh.
And most people who come and see her at the museum won't feel sick, but what they end up feeling is almost a sense of like motherly kind of protection.
Oh,
and there were a lot of ladies here today. They'll pick her up and rock her, and they don't even realize what they're doing. They'll sort of pat her on the back and basically just treat her like she's a real little girl. There was a lady actually tonight who held her and just started crying because the experience was just so overwhelming, and she felt as if she was a toy that belonged to a little girl who loved it very much. So there was like a real sense of protection about her. So we have a lot of scary things in the museum, but Ruby is not one of them. Ruby's actually very sweet, and that's probably why she's my favorite thing that we have, at least right here.
Okay.
But yeah, people always
that
think
is
she's
very
creepy.
cool.
And I always tell people she looks creepy, but she's not. She's just very old.
Well, okay. I will take everyone's word for that, because I am not going to be holding a doll.
Some people are really afraid of dolls. Yeah.
I'm one of them. I don't do dolls. So what we're looking at is, it's a baby doll. Her eyes move. I mean, they're not moving right now, but they're the kind of weighted eyes that close when you lie the doll down. She's dressed in a dark blue polka dot blouse and skirt, and she now that I know her backstory, she looks very sweet. The paint on her head is crumbling, which gives her this really weird scalp look, but we'll let that go. So this was a doll that was loved and cherished, and that's a wonderful thing. All right, what else would you like to tell me about?
I love also. I'm sure Greg touched on all the scary stuff, so I'm going to touch on the cool stuff.
All right. That's wonderful.
This is
Oh,
brand
yeah,
new.
yeah.
Did you talk about this one at all?
No.
Okay, perfect. So, a friend of ours was one of the investigators on a show, sci-fi show called Ghost Mine, and the show was basically based around these investigators spending time inside of the Crescent Mine, which is this massively famous haunted mine in Oregon. And they would just spend hours and hours inside this mine investigating. And so what he gave us is an old mine drill bit. So it's about 200 years old, and it would have been attached to something that would have basically smashed out massive pieces of the inside of the mine in order to get to the gold, because it was one of the highest gold deposits in that area. Wow. So he found it inside the cave when he was exploring and brought it home, and it would move around his house, and he had no idea how it was moving around his house. It would be in one room that he absolutely didn't leave it in, like 100. And the thing about it is, it's really heavy. Like, there's no way that this was just like, you know, accidentally getting picked up in a big handful of papers or something like that. It's really heavy. So the other thing that he gave us was there's a little gold medallion on the front of it, and when the miners would go inside of the cave, they would always wear these little gold medallions that had their names on it in case there was ever a cave-in, so they could be identified. So this is one of the gold medallions from that cave. He gave us a nice big piece of the Crescent Mine itself, and then the box that it's made out of is an old TNT box. So it's kind of like the perfect little paranormal storm potentially waiting to happen, because it's like all of these things are sort of trigger objects to each other.
Neat.
So we've only had it for 4 days. I'm really curious to see what will happen. It's probably going to quickly become one of my favorite things that we have.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see, what's another one that's my favorite? Actually, I can talk about that.
Yes, I just noticed that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a sign that says it's sitting on top of a beautiful little jar with a cork top, and the sign says dirt from Stall Cemetery, Stall, Kansas. Dirt from the infamous Stall Cemetery, one of America's legendary portals to hell. Tell me about that.
Stall is a bucket list place for both Greg and I, and we actually got to check it off the list 2 months ago when we were on our way to the Stanley Hotel. Stall is a tiny place in Kansas, and it's a small, tiny, rural cemetery, and it has some of the biggest legends attached to it. Pretty much, it is one of the most iconic, like, haunted cemeteries in the world.
So what makes this little tiny place so famous?
It is supposed to be one of, if not the, portal to hell. And a long time ago, probably about 10 years ago, there used to be a church that was actually in the inside of the cemetery, and it didn't have a roof.
Oh.
And people claimed that no matter what time of year it was or what the weather was like, rain would never land on the inside of this church. And people would take pictures of the ground from the inside of the church, and so there were all these stories that were attached to it. One of the most famous stories attached to Stall is that the Pope was flying over top of Kansas and had his jet rerouted around the cemetery because it was too evil to fly over top of.
Oh my goodness.
So it's this super, super legendary place, and the reason it's kind of gone under the radar for so many years is because ghost hunting television shows have never been able to get permission to actually investigate it.
Why not?
It's in the middle of a very small rural community, and they've had a lot of trouble with people kind of breaking in and causing mischief. So it's maintained this like uber sort of like legendary cool
mystique.
Exactly, because it's never really been investigated by anyone.
Wow.
So it's very small. When we visited, we drove through it. We didn't get out of the car because there are, again, a lot of people will say the police will sort of come and ask you to leave because there are a lot of people who will show up, and, you know, it's a small community and they don't want people sort of bombarding them all the time. And at one point in the 90s, because the devil was supposed to come out of the portal either at Halloween or during I think it was the summer solstice, there was a group of like 500 people who showed up on Halloween night at some point in the 90s, and it was just like the biggest thing that happened in the town, and a lot of people were like arrested and kicked out. So Stall is like a very cool, very legendary, kind of iconic haunted place that we drove through very fast so that we wouldn't get arrested. and we scooped up some cemetery dirt while the car was driving by as we went.
Excellent.
So, yeah, there's actually bits of the old church in there too, because the church disappeared. No one really knows what happened to it or how it was destroyed, but it disappeared.
It takes some doing to take down a building.
Yeah. So Stoll's got a lot of mystery around it. It's really fun to research it and read about all people's different experiences with the cemetery itself. And
cool.
It's very cool.
Wow. I usually treat any haunted objects with a healthy amount of respect. But this time, curiosity got the better of me. I just couldn't leave the table without experiencing at least one of the haunted things. I wasn't allowed to hold the sword, and I was still a bit shy about Billy. I'm prone to nightmares anyway, so something that would intensify them, I wasn't so sure I wanted to mess with that. And I categorically refused to hold the doll. But my attention was drawn to the dark mirror. What would I see if I looked into the darkness? The scrying mirror didn't necessarily show one's fate or a grisly demise. Sometimes what it showed was just weird. Well, I'm pretty much always up for weird, so I settled myself down and looked into the mirror.
Of like pretty much everything, and that's fine. I mean, it's great. So he asked if he could look in the mirror, and we gave him the chance to look in it. And it literally took like 30 seconds. He was super, like, freaked out. And he said he was looking into the mirror, and he watched a carbon copy of himself peek out from behind himself and smile, and then pop back in. And that particular thing, where like a visual copy will like interact with you, has happened quite a few times with people. Interesting. So yeah, it varies. It really is just from person to person. It's different every single time. So we always tell people, if you want to look in it, you absolutely can look in it. It's not necessarily going to be something scary. Sometimes it'll be a carbon copy of yourself or a weird room, or it just really depends on the person looking into it. And sometimes it just doesn't work for some people.
Yeah.
There was a lady who was at the Stanley Hotel with us, and she was holding the mirror, and she just started crying. And she set it down and literally ran out of the room. And a lot of times ladies will cry, or people will cry if they have some kind of a profound experience. And so we went and found her afterwards and asked her, like, what happened? And she just said, I didn't see anything. And she was really wanting to see her grandmother.
Oh.
So it was this really disappointing, like she was seeing all these people having these experiences with it, and it being very active, and she was just ready for it to happen, and it never happened for her, so I felt awful. But it just, sometimes it doesn't work. It's really there's no way for us to even tell. Sometimes it will work for someone who doesn't believe in anything. Sometimes it won't work for someone who desperately wants to see something. So it's interesting to watch how it works and who has experiences with it.
May I try it?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Usually the best way, probably stand here so that you don't have people walking around behind you.
Okay. That's what I was going to do, is sit here
There you go.
and see what's going on. All right. This is for science, everybody. This is your hostess with the mostest ghosties doing something for science. All right, I'm looking into the scrying mirror. Let me give you a little background here. The dark mirror, scrying mirror. It says reflects only terrible things, seem to influence objects and locations. Donor wishes to remain anonymous. So, what we're going to do is we're going to sit here and see what's going on.
But I've never experienced that. A lot of people are very they sort of like
Nothing's happening yet.
so that she's got a really positive kind of sense, I think. And it's funny because I think she's very sarcastic. There was other than that, she's just very sweet.
I know you guys are hearing a lot of background noise and everything, and hate to disappoint you, but there doesn't seem to be anything going on here, so I might not even put this in the show. People have seen very strange things in this mirror. They've seen themselves blinking when they know they're not blinking. I'm watching my eyes. Nothing's going on.
We've even brought it to never taking that just because 100% it's not the right idea. Because I mean,
nobody's making bunny ears behind my head either. I feel like I'm looking at a magic eye picture waiting for something to happen. I wonder if I pick it up, what'll happen. Still nothing. It's interesting and all, but I don't see anything happening. Well, it's good though that I didn't see anything horrible. I'm okay with that.
I mean, I never thought that.
Well, I'm one of the 20%, I guess.
It happens. It happens. That's what I'm afraid of. That's why I won't look into it.
Yeah, nothing at all. Oh well.
It happens.
I discovered I like this pair of glasses on myself.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's
there you
about
go.
it.
Hey, it wasn't totally useless. It wasn't totally useless.
I just don't wear these very often. I'm like, hey, don't look too bad in these glasses.
It's the mirror lying.
That's what it is.
That's not true.
So what's your favorite object?
It's Billy.
Billy?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, the big idol. He is my favorite. He's kind of my he's like the unofficial mascot. So we carry him with us when we do interviews and things like that. Pictures, we'll hold him.
Cool.
He's my favorite.
I have to do it at every single event because
So are you ever nervous about traveling with all of these objects?
I think that the way that it works with a lot of this stuff is if you are absolutely positive that you are in control and these things cannot harm you or influence you, they can't.
Okay.
Like anything, if you feed it fear, you're going to get what you expect. You're going to be scared. You're going to be afraid. But if you're feeding it, if you're saying like, I'm human, I'm supposed to be here, you're the weird one, you have no control over me, you're just an object and I'm in control. I never have a problem that way. I think in very rare cases there are times when it's like screw you, I know I'm stronger. And it comes back. And in that case, you bring people like, priests or shaman or light workers or whoever who can help you go, it's not true. And I think that's kind of where that ends up. But I've not yet to encounter one of those items where I don't think I'm the boss.
Very cool. Very cool. I urge everyone who enjoyed this episode to visit Gary and Dana at weekandweird.com and like Planet Weird on Facebook. They've got loads of way cool stuff there, including articles on the artifacts in their museum and a live webcam feed of the museum displays. I've watched it, and yes, the crone does move on her own. It's right there on camera, guys. And for much, much more listening fun, please visit Podcast Central on Facebook. You'll find the best podcasters in the fields of paranormal, supernatural, cryptozoological, extraterrestrial, and so much more. Visit Podcast Central on Facebook. Join me next time as we continue to explore the unexplainable, the weird, and the just plain strange on the next episode of Lights Out.